Paul Glumaz, veteran activist, organizer with the movement of Lyndon LaRouche. And today is November 14th, 2018. The media is going hysterical about, Donald Trump right now. It didn't seem to affect him at all that we had midterm elections and Trump is heading into 2 years of being president and nothing has changed. They're just going totally berserk, in this investigation and that investigation and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is very different. And that's what I want to talk about tonight, is the reality of the situation. What is happening globally is absolutely spectacular. There's a whole process of nations expanding trade and development through the Belt and Road system that the Chinese have set up. But there's a problem in how do you do trade, how do you do development if you have to use an international dollar. On the other hand, if you try to get off the dollar and use currency swaps and various different types of arrangements so that you don't use the dollar, it becomes more problematic. It becomes harder to do. And the reason it becomes harder to do is while you can have a bilateral relationship between, let's say, Japan and North Korea, Japan and South Korea, or Japan and Russia, or Japan and China, but not everything that is involved in the deal is produced in China or produced in Japan or produced in Russia or produced in South Korea. Because you have a large economy, a large world economy, and you have a division of labor where various components are created here and there. For instance, there was a report that came out in the, it was classified. It was a U.S. Report on the condition of the logistics of military procurement, and it turns out that the United States military is totally dependent on Chinese components, particularly manufactured components that are part of the electronic aspect of our military. And that the United States does not have the in-depth industrial capability or skilled labor to replace all of the foreign parts in their military arsenal. So contractors, have gone to the Chinese. So the U.S. has a situation where even its military is dependent on external components that are not produced in the United States. Now, this is a huge scandal. But the point I'm getting at is, if you're going to do trade, it's very hard to bypass the dollar system. On the other hand, the dollar, being in the dollar system, is very destructive. And I'll tell you why it's very destructive. Because when you do a trade deal in dollars and you use your currency of your country with respect to dollars, you either have to buy the dollars outside of your country to use, or if you don't buy the dollars, then you denominate your trade in dollars with respect to your own currency, you're subject to being financially speculated upon by the international financial system. Now, the international financial system makes a profit on instability. And they also finance terrorism, and they also finance the environmentalists, and they also finance all of these things. And the idea, and they finance internal conflicts in countries, because they don't make a profit if things are stable. They make a profit if there's instability, if there is a fluctuation in the currency values. if there's a fluctuation in the anticipation of whether there's going to be a war or not, or who's going to win a war, or how's it going to. This is one huge gambling casino with multiple levels of derivatives on top of derivatives, and it's all based on instability. Okay, it's all based on profit through speculation. The billionaire hedge fund managers that have multiplied before 2008 and since 2008 have multiplied. They're your biggest funders of the most destructive and unstable forces. The Democratic Party now has split into two groups. One are Democrats who hold office in areas where there's a strong working class or blue collar or relatively not wealthy blue collar crowd, and they, in their campaigns, have been saying no impeachment, no impeachment, no impeachment. Because if they said impeachment of Donald Trump, since a lot of the people that are going to vote for them also vote for Donald Trump, they just don't like the Republican. They'll vote for Donald Trump, but they won't vote for the Republican. So a lot of these people who won their elections, who are Democrats, they won their election because they talked about infrastructure and they talked about not impeaching Donald Trump. Okay. O'Rourke of Texas would have won the Senate seat from Ted Cruz had he not been so adamant about impeaching Trump, because there's a lot of his constituents that would have voted for Democrat were pissed off because they were supporting Trump, because they didn't see Trump as a conservative Republican or whatever. So that section of the party is very open right now to working with Donald Trump on development. And then you have the billionaires part of the party. Don't just call them LBGT part of the party or the green part of the party, they're the billionaires part of the party. They're getting hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars from Steyer, Soros, Bloomberg, and many of these so-called, billionaires. Jeff Bezos, who's the richest man now in the world at 110 billion or something like that. Where does Bezos get his money from? He gets his money from the deep state. He gets his money for renting his cloud space to the CIA and the government. That's a large part of where he gets his money from. And so these people, they're not productive. They're not interested in a productive society. They're interested in power. They're interested in control. And they represent the international financial system, which is the British system, which is the offshore City of London, Wall Street British system. And they are committed to that system. And they also have a belief that the world's overpopulated. They do believe the world's overpopulated. That is not a joke. I'm not making that up. And so they're not for industrial development from that standpoint. They're not for industrial development because it cuts their profits from speculation. And they're also not for industrial development because they don't believe that you should have industrial development, because industrial development will create more economic activity, and that economic activity will get people to want to have more kids. If there's a future economic future for your family, you might want to have a family. You might want to have children. But look at it today. How many people are living with their parents, and they're 30 years old and they don't have families? They can't have families. And the people who are having families are on welfare or on some kind of public assistance. You're not going to be able to support a family without public assistance of some kind or another, whether it's food stamps or what have you. So the whole thing is crazy. And then those people who are dependent on public assistance are inclined not to bite the hand that feeds them. So a lot of the Soros types and all these types, they want to promote a dependent population. They want to create a dependent immigrant population because they want That's the political base that they can control, because they control access to resources. They don't want these people to get jobs and then go into the workforce and be productive, because then they don't have control over them. They can't control their behavior. They can't control the political power that they need to have in order to carry out the system that they're in. And Trump is, and on many different levels and on many different in many different ways, is screwing up their policies, screwing up everything. He's screwing everything up. Okay, so getting back to the strategic situation, the international economic situation, you have Donald Trump saying, "Look, this whole thing of China, you know, they have tariffs and we don't, and you know, we don't import to them, but we import from them. You know, this is not a balance. Blah blah blah. We're going to put trade tariffs and what have you on the Chinese." And the Chinese are coming back at Trump and saying, "Well, look, you know, this was your system. This is the system you guys set up, right? This, you know, system of where you don't produce anything, we produce everything, and we get dollars, and you know, we're stuck with all these dollars. Well, we're not going to get stuck with all those dollars anymore, because we're going to put them to work, you know." And so they had in Shanghai, they had 2 weeks ago, a week ago, they completed the Chinese International Investment Expo. 3,600 exhibits, 400,000 people coming. And what was it all about? It was about, hey, we need your imports. Come visit us here at this expo and see what we need and see if you can export to us. So much for China's future trade surplus. But that doesn't work either, because you have this offshore dollar system, which is not a U.S. dollar, which has nothing to do with the United States. It's an international dollar, but you can't just replace it with with currency swaps, and you can't just come up with another currency like it that can be speculated upon in the same way the dollar is speculated upon. You got to have a different system, and the different system is going to be a return to LaRouche's version of what FDR had, which is the Bretton Woods, which is a new Bretton Woods, which is a fixed exchange system. That's what you're going to return to. And that works very well, because what you do is you make a political agreement that between the various countries involved, that their currency is going to be fixed at a set rate with each other. Now you can trade with your own currency, right? And you can use your own currency internally in your country to develop. You can create massive amounts of your own credit internally to develop, right? You don't have to defend your currency, right? The only time your currency gets exchanged is if someone is investing in your physical economy, or they are they're involved in trade with you. That's the only time you exchange currency, when a fixed exchange system. You don't have 99.9% of all currency transactions are speculative. And central banks bleed to keep a relative parity between the currency so that the trade doesn't go off kilter. So the international financial system holds countries completely hostage to this currency speculation. You put an end to that, and then you can really trade. You can go all out. Every country has potential. Every country has productive potential. And the biggest productive potential is in Africa. And if you're going to have a middle-class existence for the Chinese population, and we go back to a middle-class existence for most Americans who are no longer in the middle class, and etc., you're going to have to increase the division of labor. You're going to have to increase the amount of economic activity by an order of magnitude. Well, where is the surplus? The surplus is in Africa. Why is the surplus in Africa? Because all these people who are currently in some kind of subsistence agriculture or subsistence existence they're not part of this whole system. When you bring them in and you increase their living standard and you increase their skill value and you increase the infrastructure, then they're making a profound, productive contribution to the human race, to human development. The same thing goes with the people that are currently not employed in the United States, who have a sub-minimal existence within a quasi safety net system, where there's no future. And even so, millions of people are falling out of that safety net into absolute homelessness and drug addiction and alcoholism, because there's no future, there's no life. And so Donald Trump is providing some life, and he's coming under massive attack. So now you have a situation where the Democratic Party split. A lot of these Democrats want to work with Trump because Trump is not for the private-public partnership crap, which is Wall Street. He's for taxing gasoline and other areas, dedicated taxes, to pay for the infrastructure, which is what the Democrats that want infrastructure are all about. But no, the media is going all out to go through another round of this crap against Trump. Because the people behind the media, the powers, the corporations, the money behind the media do not want development. They don't want any part of this. They want depopulation. So this is now coming to a head in the U.S. This is one of the big things that's going to come to a head. Now, the other side of it. In order to have international stability, you also have to have political stability. And with all the hedge fund bankers' money is going to finance instability, ultimately that's going to lead to World War III. They don't want stability in Eastern Europe. They don't want stability in the Middle East. They don't want stability in Southeast Asia. They don't want stability in Africa. They don't want stability in Latin America. And in the case of the Middle East, and the case of all these areas, and they also want to destroy Russia and China. So they have an ongoing war. The World War III is going on right now, but it's being done through proxies. Now, what Putin is proposing, and what I think Trump would agree with, is to end all of that and have an agreement for a global security architecture. So not only do you have a global financial architecture of a new Bretton Woods, but you also have a global security architecture that ends terrorism, ends the drug trade, but most important, which is key to the terrorism, but most importantly, guarantees the security of all nations. Once you do that, now you have the stability required for development. Because how are you going to develop anywhere if it's unstable? And of course, this is what they say about the Belt. Oh, you're not going to be successful in building the rail infrastructure through these the wastelands in Asia, and you're not going to be successful. Why? Because we're going to finance the terrorists to shut you down. That's what we're going to do. Already, they're doing that with in a place called Xinjiang, which is the far northwestern province of China, which is the size of Alaska, actually, in land and in terms of square miles. And 3 major corridors are going to go through there, one to the north, one to the east, west, and one to the south, that for the Belt and Road. And about 50% of the population are Turkic Uyghurs, and there's 10,000 Turkic Uyghurs have been trained in Syria to go back and shut that all down. So now you have all these people in the U.S. and Canada and Britain screaming about Chinese repression of the Uyghurs. Well, yeah, of course they're saying that, because they want to get the money in there to have an ethnic conflict to disrupt all of that. And so this is how the system works. But there's another system coming in, and it's now coming to the point where that other system has to move towards a fixed exchange system. And they have to bring the United States in. And that means Donald Trump, because there's nobody else is going to bring it in. You ain't going to get Hillary Clinton to bring it in. You're not going to get anybody else to bring it in. It's going to be Donald Trump who's going to bring it in. And obviously he's showing a potential towards that. You know, when he says at the United Nations, you know, we want every nation to be sovereign. Well, this is how you reflect it in the financial system. Every nation is sovereign. Their currency is sovereign. We have a fixed exchange system. We have by agreement, not by imposition, not by hedge funds, not by international bankers. No, this is what this is what sovereignty really means. And when he says at the United Nations, he's against the global system, he's against globalism, he's against global governance, right? He's against these global governing systems imposing upon nations policies which are not in their national interest. Well, how is that reflected in the financial system? Not the current financial system we're in. It's reflected in what LaRouche is proposing. So now we have this meeting coming up in Argentina on the 30th. And everything is going to be launched to try to disrupt the meeting that Donald Trump is going to have with Xi Jinping. And also the meeting he's going to have with Vladimir Putin in Argentina, which that hasn't been fully confirmed and consolidated. But the meeting he's going to have with Xi Jinping has to be a meeting about a discussion about how the United States and China are going to work together to bring about a new architecture. Because this trade war, it doesn't work. You need a new architecture. And if Donald Trump has extensive meeting with Putin in the same period, it should be about a new security architecture within the context of a new financial architecture. Those are the real possibilities at the G20. The whole G20 will also include a lot of countries who would be interested in that. India, Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Turkey, etc. These countries would be open to this. So the G20 meeting could be the beginning of a dialogue process for a new financial architecture and a new security architecture. Now, go back to 2009, April 2009, the Group of 20 meeting in London. That was a meeting to put the power in the hands of the international financial system, calling for a bail-in legislation. So every country involved was supposed to pass laws to set up a bail-in in case the bank a significant bank started to go under. You could convert the liabilities into worthless bank stock to keep it nominally afloat, so that the derivatives will be protected. Because if you have a massive derivative blowout, then the whole system blows out. So this is a big change from 2009 when Obama was right after Obama was inaugurated. He led the way for the consolidation and expansion of this financial system, controlling governments and setting up an infinite bailout system. Now you have another G20 where it's not the same. You have Russia there, you have Trump there, you have China there, and you have India, and it's very different. To the degree to which our ideas, LaRouche's ideas, are actually being brought to bear in this situation, it's going to play a very big role in the discussions that are going to be held at the G20 on November 30th and December 1st. So that's very key. Extremely key. So all of these things are connected. And in no ways did Trump lose the election, despite everything you see in the media. No matter what happens in Florida and Arizona, the Senate will hold as a Republican Senate. In the case of the Congress, those Republicans in the Congress who did not endorse Trump, who distanced themselves from Donald Trump, lost. And those Democrats who were most active in pursuing impeachment in the House of Representative battles also lost. A lot of them lost. The people who won the Democratic race were the people saying they weren't about to impeach Trump and they wanted infrastructure. So now we come to the situation: is there going to be a bipartisan process developing, or is it going to be another round of hysteria and so forth? That's the question. So that's where we're headed. So this period that we're going into, this post-midterm period, is extremely dangerous. It's extremely volatile, but it's also extremely potential. It really we have the potential now to go from the old paradigm of geopolitics, permanent war, permanent instability of empire, to a new paradigm. And you could sort of say that the new paradigm is now coming out of the shadows into view in this post-election period. And our job is to disseminate this to as many people as we can. This concept of the new paradigm in economics, the new paradigm of nations, national sovereignty. And this is coherent with what Trump represents, or what he would represent, or what he's trying to represent. And it's incredible that we have a president who is open to all of this. It's an incredible opportunity. And if we don't bring the United States into the new paradigm, we will have war. We will have disintegration. We will have a total destruction of the planet. And so, and that's where we are.